My grandfather, a man who'd worked the Maine woods until they'd bent his back into a permanent question mark, used to talk about thin places. He said there are spots all over the world where the veil between what is and what was gets worn down to almost nothing. Places where you could be driving along on a Tuesday and accidentally slip into a Thursday from 50 years ago. He wasn't a superstitious man, not really. But he'd look at me over his coffee cup with his one good eye and say, "Jackie, if you're ever out on the road and the place feels wrong, don't you stop. Don't you even slow down. You just push that pedal to the floor. Because some doors only swing one way." I always thought it was just the rambling of an old man who'd spent too much time alone with the pine trees. Now I know he was trying to save my life. The rain was coming down in sheets, a biblical deluge that turned Route 17 into a slick, black ribbon of nothing. My Chevy Malibu, a rental that smelled faintly of sour milk and desperation, was hydroplaning every few minutes, and the wipers were fighting a losing battle against the downpour. My GPS had died an hour ago, its screen a blank, accusatory void. I was supposed to be in Portsmouth for a regional sales conference in the morning. A last-ditch attempt to save a job I wasn't even sure I wanted anymore. Now, I was somewhere in the soggy, forgotten backwoods of New England, hopelessly lost. The radio was spitting nothing but white noise, a harsh, crackling sound, like a nest of angry hornets. I was on the verge of pulling over and waiting for the storm to pass, or for morning, whichever came first, when I saw it. Through the thick curtain of rain, a soft, warm glow bloomed in the darkness. It was a neon sign, buzzing a defiant pink and blue against the oppressive night. The Beacon Diner. Underneath, in smaller letters, "Eat." Relief washed over me so intensely it almost made me dizzy. A diner, coffee, a hot meal. Maybe even directions from a grizzled old-timer who knew these roads like the lines on his hand. It looked like a mirage. A perfect little island of light and hope in an ocean of stormy black. I pulled the Malibu into the gravel lot, the tires crunching loudly. There were only two other cars there, a powder blue Ford Thunderbird and a cherry red Studebaker, both gleaming under the neon glow as if they'd just been polished. They were immaculate, works of art. Car show guys, I figured. The moment I stepped out of the car, the world seemed to go quiet. The roar of the rain on the car roof was replaced by a soft, pattering hush. The air smelled of wet earth, ozone, and bacon. I pushed open the glass door, a little bell tinkling merrily overhead, and stepped inside. I'd stepped back in time. The floor was a checkerboard of black and white tile, scuffed but spotlessly clean. The booths were upholstered in cracked red vinyl, and the countertops were gleaming chrome. A huge domed jukebox stood in the corner, silent but looking ready to burst into song. The air was thick with the smell of frying meat, stale coffee, and something sweet, like cherry pie. It was perfect, a little too perfect. It was like a museum exhibit of a 1950s diner, only it was real and humming with a quiet, electric life. A waitress with a blonde beehive hairdo and a starched pink uniform smiled at me from behind the counter. Her smile was wide and bright, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Her eyes were tired, old. "Come on in out of the rain, honey," she said, her voice a little too cheerful, a little too loud in the quiet room. "Table or counter?" "Counter's fine," I said, shrugging out of my wet jacket and sliding onto a chrome-legged stool. There were 3 other customers, a young couple in one of the booths, the boy with a Letterman jacket and a crisp flat top, the girl in a poodle skirt. They were holding hands across the table, staring at each other with vacant, unblinking intensity. In another booth, a man in a grey fedora sat perfectly still, a half-empty cup of coffee in front of him. He didn't look at me. He didn't seem to be looking at anything. "Coffee?" the waitress asked, already holding a glass pot. Her name tag read Peggy. "Please, black." She poured, the dark liquid steaming in the thick ceramic mug. "You're a new face. Just passing through?" "Trying to," I said with a weak laugh. "Got turned around in this storm. I'm trying to get to Portsmouth." Peggy's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. "Portsmouth? That's a good ways from here. You must have taken a wrong turn somewhere." "You can say that again. Can I get a menu?" "Sure thing, dollface." She slid a plastic-coated menu in front of me. I opened it, and my eyebrows shot up. A cheeseburger was 60 cents. A slice of pie was a quarter. Coffee was a nickel. "Wow," I said. "These are retro prices." Peggy just kept smiling that wide, empty smile. "We like to keep things traditional here at the Beacon." I ordered the cheeseburger. From the pass-through, a man in a white paper hat and a stained apron nodded silently. He moved with a strange economy of motion, his eyes never leaving his griddle. He hadn't said a word. The jukebox in the corner suddenly crackled to life, the sound making me jump. It was Buddy Holly. That'll Be the Day. The couple in the booth didn't react. Neither did the man in the fedora. It was like the music was just another part of the scenery, like the chrome napkin dispensers or the salt shakers. I pulled out my phone. No signal, of course. Not a single bar. "You won't find any of that in here," Peggy said, wiping down a spotless section of the counter. "Any of what?" "That pocket magic," she said, gesturing with her rag. "Doesn't work here." My burger arrived. It looked incredible, a picture-perfect diner burger. But when I took a bite, it was nothing. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It had the texture of meat, the vague warmth of cooked food, but there was no flavour. It was like eating a memory of a cheeseburger. I ate it anyway, but I felt anxiety run through me. I was hungry, and it was food. Buddy Holly faded out and was immediately replaced by Elvis. Hound Dog. The jukebox was playing the same 5 or 6 songs on a loop. I looked around again. Really looked. The sugar in the dispenser was perfectly white, not a single clump. The ketchup bottle was full to the exact same level in every booth. There wasn't a speck of dust anywhere. It was all too clean, too neat, too preserved. I finished my flavourless burger and drank my coffee. The unease was growing, turning into a terrible dread. I needed to leave. "Can I get the check, Peggy?" "Sure thing, hun." She scribbled on a small green pad. "That'll be 75 cents. I pulled out my wallet and dropped a $10 bill on the counter. Peggy stared at it. She tilted her head, her smile finally gone, replaced by a look of utter confusion. "What's this?" she asked, her voice losing its forced cheerfulness. It just sounded unsure. "It's $10. She poked it with her finger as though it were a dead bug. "It's not right. The picture's wrong." The cook looked over from his griddle, his face pale and sweaty under the fluorescent lights. The couple in the booth finally broke their gaze and turned to look at me, their faces identical masks of blank curiosity. The man in the fedora slowly and deliberately turned his head. His eyes were milky and unfocused. The unease I felt previously was now screaming at me. I fumbled in my wallet, pulling out a handful of coins. I found 3 quarters and slapped them on the counter. "Here, 75 cents, keep the change." Peggy looked at the coins and then back at me. Her smile returned, but now it was different. It was strained and sharp, a predator's smile. "You have a good night now," she said. I grabbed my jacket and practically ran for the door. The bell tinkled behind me, a sound that now seemed less cheerful and more like a warning. The rain was still coming down, but it felt good, real. I fumbled for my keys with my hands shaking and jammed one into the driver's side door. As I got in, I glanced back at the diner. To my horror, they were all standing in the window. Peggy, the cook, the couple, the man in the fedora. All of them, standing shoulder to shoulder. Their faces pale ovals in the neon glow, watching me with those same dead, empty eyes. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died. "No, no, no, no," I whispered. I tried again. A gut-wrenching grind, then silence. Nothing. The battery was dead. I slammed my fist on the steering wheel, a wave of panic and despair washing over me. I was stranded. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "It's just a dead battery," I thought to myself. "I'll go back in, ask to use their phone. They have to have a phone." My eyes scanned the diner's interior from the safety of my car. I saw Peggy walk away from the window and go behind the counter. She reached up and tore a page off a calendar that was hanging on the wall. I squinted, trying to make out the date. The light was good. I could see it clearly. September 14th, 1958. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It had to be a gag, a prop for the diner's theme. But then I watched as she took the torn-off page, folded it neatly, and slid it under the counter, with a stack of what must have been hundreds of identical pages. And the date that was now showing on the calendar? September 14th, 1958. I felt a scream building in my throat. I looked wildly around the parking lot, at the Thunderbird, at the Studebaker. They weren't just polished. There wasn't a speck of rust on them. No pitting in the chrome. They were brand new. My eyes fell on a different car, parked in the shadows at the far end of the lot, half hidden by a thicket of overgrown bushes. It was a Ford Fairlane, its paint faded, its body covered in a thick layer of rust and grime. It looked like it had been sitting there for a very, very long time. I had to get out. Not just out of the car, but away. I threw the door open and scrambled out into the rain, not even bothering to grab my jacket. I ran, my feet slipping in the wet gravel, my lungs burning. I ran away from the diner, away from its warm, predatory glow, and plunged into the absolute pitch-black darkness of the woods that lined the road. I ran until I couldn't breathe, tripping over roots and stumbling through unseen creeks. I don't know how long I was out there. An hour, maybe 2. The rain finally began to let up, and a sliver of moon appeared through a break in the clouds. I was completely lost, soaked to the bone, and shivering uncontrollably. I stumbled through the trees, desperate for the road, for anything. And then finally, I saw something. A soft, warm glow filtering through the trees. Hope surged through me. A house, a town, anything. I pushed through a final line of thick, wet branches and found myself standing on the edge of a gravel lot. I saw a familiar pink and blue neon sign. The Beacon Diner. I was back where I started. It wasn't possible. I'd run in a straight line, directly away from it. I stared, my mind refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. The Thunderbird and the Studebaker were still there, gleaming. And so was my rental Malibu. And next to it, where the rusted out Fairlane had been, there was now a 1980s model. It seems the trap had a new trophy. Defeated, I looked at the diner, and I saw him. In the window, standing next to Peggy and the others, was a new face. He was a man with a shaggy haircut and wide lapels. His face pale, and his eyes as empty as a starless sky. I knew, with a certainty that was colder and heavier than any stone, that I was looking at the man who owned that 1980s car. The diner's door opened. Peggy stepped out, that terrible, welcoming smile plastered on her face. "Looks like you got lost again, honey," she called out, her voice cutting through the quiet night. "Don't you worry. Here at the Beacon, we always have room for one more."